no doubt if you're watching this video, then you probably saw already what happened to the RAV-1. And I'm not as upset as you may think I should be or could be, because the RAV-1 did its job. Its sole purpose was to test the RPM and the ACE unit, which it did splendidly. We got a lot of good flights, some failures, but a lot of successes. And fortunately, it survived almost every failure up until the last one, of course, which had nothing to do with the system we were testing. It just, we had a CATO and the motor blew out, and you can see obviously the blowout here. So this rocket, the RAV-1, is officially retired, but it is not going to be the last one I build. In fact, let me show you. I've already got the decals made up for the RAV-2. So I've thought about how can I improve upon this design, and I'll be honest with you, the flights with this were so good that I really don't want to mess with it. You know, they say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm going to basically replace it with an identical lower body tube. I'm going to replicate this exactly. I'm going to use the ESAM 58 fins. I am going to upgrade still to a 24mm motor with the Estes retainer ring on the back. And yeah, I'm going to completely replace this with all new stuff. Let me show you what I got. I already showed you the decals I've already printed up. Now, one thing I do want to share with you, when I built the ESAM, well, basically used the ESAM fins for the RAV-1, I always save my punch outs. I have a box where I store these, and I always label them with what it was, because you never know if you're going to need them again. Well, guess what? I need it again. So I pulled out a sheet of 3/16 inch balsa wood, and I have just enough right here in this little scrap area in the corner to fit an entire fin set. So I'll be able to trace the template out, cut out new fins, and have a full set of replacement fins. And I'm also going to sheet them with plastic. I've already got my plastic ready to go. When I cut this in half, it'll be enough to cover both sides. So yeah, I'm really excited. Let's see, what else do I have here? I've got my launch lug ready to go. Well, I'm going to cut this down to 2 inches. In fact, we can go ahead and do that right now. Let's do that as part of this intro so we get everything ready. This needs to be 2 inches, so I'm going to line this up on the mark, set it at 2 inches, and I cut mine with a straight edge razor, and I just roll it, and eventually, there it goes. It'll cut right through, and you get a nice, perfect, clean cut. So there's our 2-inch launch lug for the kit. I do have a new motor mount ready to go. This is from Rocketarian. The last one I used in the previous RAV-1 was the Apogee, but you're basically getting the same thing. The only real difference is the Rocketarian body motor mount uses plywood centering rings instead of fiber. You know, not much of a difference there. So that's going to be our motor mount. I am also going to cut a new body tube. And let's go ahead and do that right now as well. The RAV-1 had a body tube length of 26.5 millimeters or centimeters. So let me go ahead and mark that out. I'm kind of rushing through this because I really want to get going on the build, and I want to get this intro out of the way. Well, I need to turn it the right way. But let's get this marked off at 26.5. Right there. Okay. Take my BT60 cutting guide. Run it up to the mark I made. Right there, and we'll slip the other cover on, and we'll just compress it to tighten it. Then I take a single edge razor blade and puncture, and then I just kind of work it around, twisting the tube. And of course, this is a lot easier with a new razor blade, so if you have any dullness in your blade, go ahead and replace it. There we go. Look at that. Perfect, clean cut. All right. Let's take that off. measure, we should have 26.5 centimeters. 26.5 right on the nose. Perfect. So we got our body tube. We will have our new fins cut out. And, well, heck, since we're doing this, let's just go ahead and get our fins at least drawn up. Okay, trying to fit it in there. There we go. Okay. Take my marker or my felt tip pen and just draw along the inner lines. And voila, look at that. We've got fins. Oh, and well, let's go ahead and mark our angled cuts too. Let's see, how do I want it? Let me turn this way. The fins go at a diagonal. So from one corner to the other corner. Just like that. Now I'll go ahead and cut these off camera, but I'll just use my straight edge and my razor, and we'll get those cut, and I will sand them all together to get them all even and equal. And we can get this built. In fact, this is going to be a rather quick project, I believe. So I want to get the AC unit up and running once again. Got some more testing to do with it, so we gotta get her flying. So let's go ahead and get going. Okay, I've got all 4 fins cut out and sanded equally. You can see they all line up on all 4 corners. They're equal with one another. So now we're going to use a different technique than I used on the last RAV-1. The last RAV-1 I used the spray adhesive. This time we're going to use 30-minute epoxy. I could probably use 5-minute epoxy if they were smaller fins, but they're pretty large and I got 4 of them. So I don't want to end up, ruining the 4th fin trying to rush it before the glue hardens. So I'm going to go with the 30-minute. And I've already got my plastic cut in half. We're going to use 1 sheet initially. So I'm going to lay that right there, and as I apply the epoxy to 1 fin, I'll just lay it down, do that 4 times, and then I will place it under my plywood press with the weight on it to get them nice and flat while they harden. And like I said, this will set up in about 30 minutes, but I'm going to leave it overnight anyway, and then tomorrow I'll do the other side. But yeah, let's just go ahead and mix up some epoxy. And you'll notice 30-minute epoxy is a little bit thinner than 5-minute. That allows it to set up a little longer. And I want to make sure I get enough. You definitely don't want to run out halfway through your project. Probably should have done this ahead of time before I started recording, but it's okay. I'm not going to do the whole thing on camera anyway. I'll probably just do the first fin, lay it down on the plastic, and then I'll do the other 3 off camera, and then I'll show you what it looks like after I pull them out of the press. And then we're going to have to trim them before gluing them down to the other side. You definitely want to get this nice and thoroughly mixed up. I kind of rotate the little dish here as I use this technique. That kind of helps spread it around a little bit as well. I'll pull in the outer edges too to get it all thoroughly mixed up. Okay, nice kind of white milkish color to it. Okay, let me get a paper towel and what I want to do is just kind of wipe some of the dust off. The nice thing about this technique is you don't have to worry about really sanding this to a fine, smooth plane because you're gonna cover it with the plastic anyway. That's kind of one nice advantage to doing it this way. Okay, so just kind of lay it on. Spread it. And then just like I do when I am papering my fins using wood glue and paper, I'm going to wipe this down until it's almost non-existent. So you have just the finest of layers. Okay, once you get full coverage, then I'm going to just pull it all off. Okay, and then take it the other way. Just like so. And we're gonna go to our plastic sheet and just lay it down. Okay, there's one. Okay, like I said, I'm gonna do the other three off camera, but I'll use the same technique to fill up the sheet and put it under the press, and we'll come back when it's all dry. Okay, the fins have dried overnight with the 30-minute epoxy, and they are down nicely. In fact, I'm not sure if it shows on the other side with the camera, but they are perfectly smooth, perfectly flat. The press completely leveled everything and flattened everything out nicely. So now it's time to cut and trim out the edges so we can apply them to the other side of plastic, which we got right here. So I'm simply just going to take my X-Acto knife and using the fin as my cutting template, just going to run it right along the side of the fin. Now when you do this, initially you'll encounter a little resistance with some of the epoxy, because when it gets flattened, some of the epoxy kind of oozes out the sides a little bit. So you'll feel that resistance when you hit those little bumps. But just, kind of work through it, and a nice sharp fresh blade will be able to cut right through it, no problem. See right there, it is hung up a little bit on some epoxy. So let me just run a second pass through. That did it. Absolutely perfect. I'm really enjoying this new technique. I think paper still has its place with fins, but I think for the larger fins like this, I think this plastic is definitely the way to go. There we go. One perfectly sheeted fin with polystyrene plastic. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut the remainder out, and I probably won't have to show it on camera again, but I'm just gonna glue these down on the other sheet of plastic just like I did the other side. And then we'll have 4 fully completed fins. And then when we're done, then I'll come back and show you how I seal the edges. But yeah, looking really nice, making progress. Okay, while we have the fin sheeting setting up onto the press, I figured this is a good opportunity to go ahead and build our motor mount. So while one thing's drying, try to be efficient and get something else going. And this is going to take a little bit of time to dry as well, because we're going to eventually start gluing up with some JB welds. So this is going to be a bit of a project too. One thing that came up in my last build of the RAV-1 is when I took the Estes retainer cap for the motor and I put it over a BT50 tube, which is the same diameter as what we need for the motor mount. There's a little bit of slop in there. It doesn't fit, real nice and snug. It doesn't align very well. So I'm gonna do basically the same thing I did last time, is take an excess piece of BT50, cut it to, what is that, about 3/8 of an inch. And it's exactly the depth of the retainer ring there. So cut off a piece of BT50, split it in half, and then wrap it around one end of the body, or the motor tube. And then that gives us the perfect thickness to squeeze into that end cap and have it nice, snug, and straight. So first thing we want to do is go ahead and glue this on to the body tube. So to do that, I'm just going to use some simple wood glue, and it's not going to take much. So I'm just going to run a fine little bead around the perimeter. And just kind of rub it in, spread it with your finger, like so. Okay. Always have a paper towel on hand. Let me do one more spread. Okay. Now this is one of those cases where probably less is more, because it'll dry quicker and it won't be as bulky and cumbersome. So I'm just take our wrap it on the tube, and just put it down on something flat to get it flush, and there we have it. That is literally all there is to that. Okay, I'll wipe off any glue that may have spilled out. Okay, while that's setting up, we're going to go ahead and I'll just set that aside for now. We're going to go ahead and mix up our JB weld. I probably could have done this off camera, but it's okay. It doesn't take long. In fact, we're not going to use much anyway. And the reason I use heat JB weld is because it's a lot more heat resistant than standard epoxy. And this is, if you're gonna pick one spot on the rocket where it's gonna get extremely hot, you're gonna pick the motor mount. That's just an obvious answer. So I'm gonna use the glue that's most heat resistant. Okay. Mix even amounts there. And the nice thing about JB weld is it's black and white, so when you mix it and it turns into a nice gray color, you know you've got a good mix. Again, this isn't going to take much at all, really, just enough to spread around the motor mount and glue into the retainer. Okay, now I'm going to let that sit for just a second. What I want to do is, before I glue the retainer on, I want to take some sandpaper, this is like 220, and just kind of scuff up the plastic right where the JB weld is going to go. That gives it a little bit more purchase power and strength on the adhesion. Yeah, epoxy or any glue to glossy plastic is just not going to work as well. You want it to bite into something, and that's going to be the roughened up plastic. So, okay, so that's all set there. Okay, now we take our motor mount, and it's already setting up. So now I want to put the glue on this end. If I put the glue on the cap, as I push it in, it's going to ooze out into the outer ring where we don't want glue to be. So we're going to put the glue on the tube, so as I push it in, the glue will be forced backward, and that's more or less where we want it to go. Okay, so with that, let me just lay down my JB weld. And we're going to allow enough of the JB weld to go beyond this ring here, because we're going to go ahead and mount our centering ring flush up against the back end of this tube. Okay, there we go. Nice full coverage. All right, then we're gonna take our cap here and just lay it in there, and we're gonna twist it as we kind of go. That'll help spread the glue better. Perfect. And you can verify on the inside that it's flush. It's all the way in, just the way we want it. And just to be on the safe side, I am going to run a Q-tip with some rubbing alcohol on the inside, just to clean up any residual that may have leaked out. And maybe just a little bit of graze on the Q-tip there, not bad at all. So we got it clean. Again, all the leftover glue was forced to the back, which is good because it builds kind of like a natural fillet in the back side there. I'm gonna go ahead and let that sit for a minute and grab my centering ring. Now, the Rocketeering kit comes with 2 rings. One comes with a larger gap or a little notch for the engine hook, which we're not using. It came with a pretty large E engine hook, but we're not going to use the engine hook. So I'm going to put this toward the front. We want the one with the less notch. That way it'll capture the glue better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a thin bead of wood glue now. All the way around there. Run this ring in, and I'm going to run it till we're flush with the cap. And you'll see some of the glue kind of oozing out there, which is good. That means we're all the way in. Now I'm going to push it down. There we go. Very nice. All right, so literally we're just gonna, well, you know what I'm gonna do too, is I'm gonna go ahead and clean that up a little bit. Just to make a nice little clean fillet, even though the threads of the cap aren't gonna go down that far. It doesn't hurt to make things aesthetically nice. So, there we go. Nice clean cap with the centering ring. Again, we're gonna let that set up, and actually, you know what? While we're doing that, there's no reason why we can't go ahead and do the back fillet. Just thought of that. Why not? Let's run a bead of glue around the backs. Did definitely put too much glue on for this, but that's okay. We'll spread it thin. There, that's gonna make a nice clean fillet. Again, even though it's gonna be hidden, you'll never ever see it again. You know what it looks like, and you'll take pride in knowing that you did the best you could. Okay. Now, we still have enough time to go ahead and glue on the back centering ring. Now this one, we're just gonna put it maybe 1/16 of an inch in from the end. That way we can get a fillet on the back side as well. So let's go ahead and run our glue around here. And if you notice in my voice, I sound like I'm rushing this job, and truth be told, I am. The reason being, I've got an upcoming event with a friend of mine, possibly friends, it depends on how many show up, but that's in less than 2 weeks. So I really want to get this flying and well, ready to fly. I'd love to maiden flight it while they're here. So that urgency to get it built is probably coming out in my tone of voice. because I really want to get this done quickly. Let's do the roll test. Oh, those are nice and parallel with each other. Okay, now we can run our fillet. So unfortunately, nobody but me was able to see the RAV-1 fly in person, but the RAV-2 is going to be identical. So if you wanted to see the RAV-1 fly, well, you're going to see it by way of the RAV-2. All right, now we're just going to run another little fillet around the backside here. Technically, this is the front side. Okay. Okay, I'm going to clean out any glue that may have gotten on the inside of the tube. There we go. Do the roll test, make sure you don't see any wobble. What you're looking is, you're looking at the rings to make sure there's no like wobble to them. That means they're not parallel. But no, those look really good. So really the only other thing I have to do is insert the centering ring, but I have to wait until everything dries because I need to put pressure against this threaded cap to get the right length and distance. So I'm going to let that dry, set up and dry, and then we're going to come back and install the centering ring, not centering ring, thrust ring, and then literally the engine mount is complete. So yeah, that went together pretty smoothly, and we'll just let that dry. Okay, as you can see, the fins are now out of the press. They're sheeted on both sides with the polystyrene plastic sheets. And I'm very pleased with the way they came out. I just did a simple trim around the edges to get as close to the wood as I could. Now, one thing I tried on one of the fins, and I wanted to try it off camera first to see if it would work, and I think it did. So I'm going to show you how I do that with one of the other fins. But the dilemma comes in where, how do you seal the edges? Of course, you don't want to seal the root edge because that needs to glue to the body tube. But in this case, there's 3 sides that need to be sealed, and typically what I would do is just take some thin CA glue and just run a thin bead of CA around it. But what I've had happen in the past is some of the CAs ran over the sides, and you try to wipe it and it leaves imprints, and it's just not a real smooth finish. So what I tried doing was just taking some wood glue and laying a bead of glue around the 3 sides, and then let it sit up for a minute or so, let it tack up, and then just sheet it with a thin strip of paper. This is just regular copy paper. I cut out a thin little strip here and laid it around there. It stayed, and then I trimmed it with an X-Acto knife, and then I very gently sanded it flush with the side, and I think it came out pretty good. Now, perfect? No. But once I get it primed, then I'll be able to see any gaps or seams that I need to fill in with filler. But I don't know. I like the way it came out, so I'm going to try it on the other 3, at least for this rocket, and see if it comes out nicely done when it's painted. So let me show you how I did it. Just take one of your fins, take some wood glue, and just run a thin edge right along the whole thing. Use your finger to kind of spread it out. Always have a paper towel on standby to wipe your finger off, because you're going to end up with a lot of excess glue. And you want to make sure you get, pretty good coverage. Now you're going to end up with some overflow around the sides, but that's easy enough to wipe off with your finger. Again, this is an experimental idea, and if it works, great. If not, well, no harm done, but I'm always trying new things, trying to find ways to improve. Okay, so there's a little bit of overflow. I'll just kind of wipe it off with my finger. And like I said, I'm going to let that sit for about a minute just to kind of tack up. Okay, it's already kind of losing its gloss, which means it's starting to dry a little on me. So I just took a thin strip of paper, a little wider than the fin, and I'm going to just lay it up against the edge there. Lay it down, press it, kind of roll it to kind of get the sides down. Okay, then I'm going to rotate it to follow the contour of the edge. Again, kind of rolling it. There we go. So now the camera's not going to be able to pick this up, but there's a little bit of glue that kind of squeegeed out there on the side. That'll sand off easy enough, or you can just take a wet Q-tip and kind of clean that out. But there's not much there, so I'm just going to let it sit and help kind of tack up the paper. But yeah, I'm thinking I like this technique. It's pretty simple. Doesn't take much time. It's pretty quick. But hopefully, when we paint it, you'll see a nice, clean, crisp edge on these, as opposed to the sometimes lumpy and inconsistent edges you get with just CA glue. And again, plus with the CA, you risk it running down the side and just messing up a fine, finished fin. So, yeah. Now that that's set up fairly well, I'll show you how I trimmed it. Just kind of took my X-Acto knife. First thing I did was trimmed off the edges, the overhang. And now I did it from the front pushing in, so I'm not pulling it out. Here, let me do it this way. There, just kind of run the knife along the edge. It takes several of these little passes, but again, you can sand it later to get it even closer to the edge. I suppose you could do this with the plastic as well if you have any leftover plastic sheeting, but this is just so simple and easy to use with paper and wood glue. See, look at that. Nice clean edge. And again, I will go over that with the sanding block just to kind of smooth over. But I'm pretty pleased with it. So I'll go ahead and do the other side off camera and do the other two fins. But I think once we get to the priming stage, then we'll really know if this technique really does help. But we are definitely making progress on the RAV-2. Okay, now that the fins are all done, you can see here I got all four. And I'm really pleased with the results of that paper edging. It'll be really interesting to see how it comes out when I prime it. But for now, I'm pretty pleased with the way it looks, and hopefully it's as durable and as strong as it looks it might be. But before we glue them on, obviously we need to mark the body tube first. So I got my body tube marking guide here, set for BT60. And I just need to make 4 notches at the base, where each of the fin lines are going to be on. So I'm going to make 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, then I'm going to transfer this over to my handy dandy line guide, and I'm just going to line up each notch on the guide and draw a line. I'm going to make it kind of dark because I'm going to sand down this part anyway, so I kind of want the lead line to show. And you may notice too, I'm not sure if it's coming up in the camera, the spirals are somewhat filled in. I spray painted this with white primer, and then I wiped the whole thing down with lacquer thinner, and what is left behind is the paint in the spiral grooves. So that should help out when we primer this later, that it won't be as deep as a ridge that we're going to have to fill in with the putty. So anyway, we'll see how well that works out, but I think it's going to help out at least a little bit. Okay. You want to draw your lines up at least as far as the fins are going to go. So that's 3 to 4 inches at least. Okay, and one more. And then we're going to have to mark for our launch lug, which we're going to use a little bit different technique for that. Okay. So we're done with that. Now we've got our 4 lines for our fins, but I'm going to take a standard Estes paper guide that's set for BT60 and also 4 fins. In this case, it's actually for 8 fins because this is for the ESAM 58. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just simply line it up on 2, and it doesn't matter which 2, but just line it up with 2 fin marks. For example, right there and right there, and I'm going to use that to establish my center line, which is where our launch lug is going to go. So I'm going to do this again, and now I'm going to draw this. Actually, I'm going to draw it full length all the way to the top, because that'll give me a reference line for when I glue the launch lug down. I can use that full length line as a reference. Okay. Now, if you've seen me build in the past, in fact, I did it on my last RAV-1, I glue the fins not on the center line, but to the side of the center of the line. That way I can line the line up with the edge of the fin. That way I'm not guessing as to where it is centered on the actual line. So with that, we can go ahead and get started. Let me grab a little piece of sandpaper, and I'm just going to scuff up the area where the fins are going to go, but I'm still going to leave the line visible. Okay. And this doesn't take a lot of effort. And since it's clear, we might as well go ahead and sand the launch lug area off as well. Okay, with that, let me grab some wood glue. And we do have a fin here ready to go. So our edge that we did not cover, our exposed edge, is perfect for laying down some glue. Thin bead, grab a paper towel. Okay. And just kind of spread it with your finger to get full coverage. Okay, that's good. I'll do this first one on camera and then I'll do the remainder off camera, but it's the same technique. Okay, so I'm going to line this up on the right side of the line. So I'm just going to set it down adjacent to the line, roll it a little bit, and pick it back up. Now we're going to let that sit for about 45 seconds to a minute till it tacks up on us. And then we're going to lay it back down and it'll hold its position, so we'll be able to glue on the other fins. Now, because I'm going to do this off camera, you won't see me do it. But I'm going to go opposite fins. For example, I'm going to glue this one on, then I'm going to go across 180 degrees to the other side. That way I can ensure that they're parallel with one another. Then I can do the other 2 that are opposite one another as well. That just assures that we get at least, the first 2 in line with each other, and that'll help the remainder of the setup. So, okay, give that a couple more seconds. Now this isn't like a one-shot deal. If it does not line up just the way you like it, there's still enough movement in this glue that you can move it a little bit, but it will hold its form while you glue the other ones on. It's not going to fall over on you. That's the key to doing this. Okay, it looks like it's kind of glossed over now. Okay, so I'm just going to lay it back down. It's kind of like contact cement in that it hears once it touches. Kind of look down the tube. Everything looks good. You can adjust your angle a little bit if you need to. There we go. Press it firmly in. There you go. One fin on. Like I said, I'm going to do the remainder off camera, but it's going to be the same technique. And I'll go ahead and do the launch lug off camera as well, because it's just a matter of gluing it onto that line. A little off center just to make sure it's between the two fins. But yeah, so once we get that in, then she'll be ready for prime. And I'm probably going to hold off on the motor mount until the very end. That might be my last step. We'll see how things go from there. But yeah, for now we're going to get the fins on. Looking good. Okay, I've got all 4 fins glued on and the launch lug. And I'm not sure how well you can tell on camera, but they came out pretty straight, and I'm pretty pleased with their orientation. And again, the launch lug is right down that center line between the 2 fins. So I'm going to let this set aside to dry completely before I do the fillets. But one thing we can also go ahead and do is get the thrust ring or engine block, same thing, glued up into the motor tube. And I'm going to use an existing e-motor just to give me some reference and placement on it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the glue in from the back side, but then I'm going to run the ring in from the front. And I'm going to use the motor to push it in as far as it needs to go. And I want to leave about 1/4 of an inch sticking out the back, which will give me enough distance so I can get some threads onto the cap, but still have enough, security in there. So let me grab the wood glue. I'm going to take a Q-tip. And I may have to do this a couple times, but I'm just going to run a bead of glue, about 3/4 of an inch down or so. I'm going to put some more because I want to build up a nice fillet in front of the ring. Okay, got that nice and coated. Take our ring from the back side, at least get it started. Take our motor, run it up, and I'm going to stop it, like I said, about 1/4 of an inch from the end. Right there, and pull it out. And there we have it. We've got the engine block in there, and it already built up a little bit of a fillet as it pushed that glue forward. Not quite sure how much the camera can see on that, but it is filleted. It's going to reinforce it, and it is set to the correct depth. So I'm going to let this sit aside to dry as well, and we'll come back and it's time to start doing our fillets on the fins. Okay, everything is dried, and I've gone ahead and masked off for the fin fillets, as well as the launch lug as well. Also, now you'll notice I didn't put any masking tape on the body tube itself. I'm not saying I was being lazy. It's just I'm gonna, anything that seeps out further into the tube, I'm just gonna wipe it off with a Q-tip and alcohol anyway. But I do want to keep the plastic of the fins clean from any overruns, so I did mask them off all around the launch lug. So I've already got my rock epoxy mixed up, so we can go ahead and start applying it. And whenever you work with epoxy, don't forget to have paper towels and rubbing alcohol on hand. So I'm just going to lay this into the joint there. Just kind of run it down the seam, kind of work it into the groove. That will help prevent getting any air bubbles. If you just try to fill in all those little nooks and crannies. And I'm just going to do this one side as well as the launch lug. for the sake of recording, and then I will do the remainder off camera because it's just, at that point, it gets repetitive. Let me just draw some of this down. There we go. Okay. And if you want to, it's not a bad idea to get a fresh, clean popsicle stick to actually run the bead with. There you go, just one nice continuous motion. And we can go ahead and lay the excess over on this side. Make use of our epoxy. Okay, get just a little bit more here. Okay, and we'll just one smooth motion. There we go. Perfect. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and do the launch lug since we're on this side. And I probably didn't mix up enough to do all the fins anyway. And plus, I've noticed when I try to do more than 3 fins at a time, the last fin, the epoxy is starting to get a little harder. It's not really drying yet, but it's getting hard enough where it doesn't flow as smooth as it would if it were fresh. So I'm just going to do maybe 2 sides and the launch lug on this batch, and then I'll make up a fresh batch of epoxy for the other 2 fins. The thing about the launch lug is you do really have to work the glue down into that crevice because it's concave as opposed to the way the fillets are up against the fins where it's just a 90-degree angle. This one, it actually kind of goes in underneath the launch lug. I'm not sure if concave is the right term or not, but I'm sure you can understand the gist of what I'm saying. It's got to go up and inside that little gap. There we go. Okay, draw that out. See, it got a big air bubble right there. So I'm glad we caught that now. Okay. Draw this out. Okay. Other side looks good. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and do this side. And when it comes to using the Q-tips, don't be cheap. If you need to use more, use more. Don't try to do too much with one because you'll end up just making a mess and smearing it instead of tearing it off or cleaning it off. So they're cheap enough, just use as many as you need when it comes time to clean up. transition back to this one. Okay, that one looks good. Those look good. Okay, now I'm gonna set the epoxy aside and we're going to get some cleanup done here. Like I said, don't be cheap about the Q-tips. Use as many as you need. I'm going to mainly worry about the epoxy that's on the body tube. The stuff that's on the tape, that's just going to come up when I peel the tape off. So there's not much to do there. So as you swipe the Q-tip, roll the Q-tip against or into the direction you're going, and that'll help lift the epoxy up and off the surface. Okay, it's going to take more than one pass on this one. There we go. And then also, as you kind of compress the Q-tip into the body, the alcohol will come out of the Q-tip and will flow down into the fillet and will actually make it a little bit smoother. It'll help kind of smooth out that epoxy because it's thinning it. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do the other two sides and the launch lug off camera, but you get the idea, and we'll come back and check in when all the fillets are done, and we'll be ready for primer at that point. Okay, as you can see here, the gray primer is all done, and I've got the black fins painted as well. So literally the next thing we're gonna do is put on our decals. I'm still gonna wait till the very end to install the motor mount, just because, you know, I just don't want it, you know, why bother with it be in the way and everything. So I'm gonna put the RAV-2 decal opposite the side of the launch lug. So I'm gonna lay that down. I'm gonna trim this just a little bit more around the edge. Like so. And I've also got the smaller ones that say RPM Ace Vehicle. And I'm just gonna basically cut squares out of these. Okay, there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, we can throw the scraps away. Okay, want to have my paper towel ready. Also going to have some Q-tips on hand. And also, I'm going to just have a pair of tweezers here to work with. So let's go ahead and pour our water into the little basin. Okay. Now I'm just going to eyeball this. I'm going to center it between the top of the fins and the top of the tube. Okay, so we'll just get that soaking. Paper towel ready to go here. Okay, it's already breaking free. Just rub some water down here. Remove that. Okay. Just lay this down. And slide the backing right out from under it. Okay. While it's wet, you can move it around a little bit, kind of adjust it where you want. That looks to be good. Okay. Now we'll take a Q-tip and just sort of from the middle out, push any air bubbles and squeegee all the water out. Okay. Use my paper towel as well just to kind of blotch out some of the excess moisture. Just be careful when you do this, you don't actually slide the decal. All right, I would say that that looks just about perfect. Yeah, very, very pleased with that. Okay, now we're gonna go down to one of the smaller ones here. And I'll just do one of these on camera. I don't need to show all four, they're gonna be the same. But I'm just gonna set them between each fin down at the base of the body tube. Good. And sort of roll the water out from underneath it as well as the air. Alright, there we go. Excellent. There you have it, RAV-2. Like I said, I'll do the other three off camera, but just about done. I'm gonna let this sit for a day, let them dry up, and then I'm gonna clear coat them with some quick shine clear floor polish, and then glue in the body or the motor tube, and it's ready to fly. Okay, so now it's time to glue the motor mount into the body tube. And one thing I've already pre-done is I've already created my Kevlar shock cord that wraps around the tube and then slips through a little hole in the front centering ring. But I've got the shock cord pulled back through the rear end so it's not going to be in the way as we insert this into the tube. I've already got some 5-minute epoxy mixed up. Traditionally I normally use wood glue, but because I really don't want to risk getting the tube stuck halfway up, I just want to give a little more allowance for time, so I'm going to use some epoxy. So now we're going to go ahead and measure the length up from the bottom, and it looks like it's going to be just the exact length of a popsicle stick. So I'm going to go ahead and get some glue on the stick here, hold the very tip, and kind of work this around. Okay, get a little bit more. Okay, let's see. Okay, I can see full coverage around the ring. That's good. Now we're going to go ahead and get the first part inserted, like so. Then we're going to run a bead of glue just on the inside of the base here. The idea is that the bottom ring is going to pick up this glue as it's inserted up into the base. we go, just like that, full coverage. Get a little bit more down in here. The nice thing about the back end is you're able to see what you've missed, if anything, as well. Okay, so full coverage. Now, again, the wood glue would catch right away, whereas the epoxy is going to give us some working time, so that's good. In fact, I can feel it hitting the epoxy right now, which is good. We're in the right area. All right, now we're just going to slowly, there we go, pop that in. Let's rotate a little bit, get some coverage, and finish it off right there. There we go. Okay, so we're gonna let that sit, and again, in 5 minutes, it's not gonna be moving on us, so that's good. So we're gonna let that set up, and then we're gonna come back and put some clear coat over the decals in the body, and then this rocket is done and ready to fly. Okay, the motor mount is glued in and drying. It's dry, but it's not cured yet, but that's okay, because that's all internal. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this opportunity to apply some Quick Shine floor finish. I'm leaning toward abandoning the Pledge floor polish because I'm having some issues with it crackling on me once it dries. But I've not had that issue with the floor shine, Quick Shine. So I'm going to give it a go on this project and see if we get better results on that. So let me set that out of the way. Now the difference is, you can see it's a little bit milkier color. It's kind of a cloudy whitish color, but it still dries clear, so that's fine. I've got the rocket up on a stand here, and I'm just going to make some smooth, even coats. I realize you can't quite see the top of the rock, and I apologize for that. But this is a good test on using a different product and see if we get different results. I'll come back and do the fins after I get the body complete. Okay, one more side here. And then, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and do the fins also, because I've had issue with black in the past, and hopefully we'll maintain that gloss and not get the crackling. So let's go ahead and, okay, so the whole body's done. Let's go ahead and do a fin here. I almost hate to do this because the fins came out so glossy and smooth to begin with, but again, I do need to test this and see if it's going to be a good product moving forward. It likes to run, but fortunately it should be self-leveling, and we'll get nice smooth results. This is our fourth and final fin here. All right, we are done. Gonna let this dry, and we'll be off the launch pad before you know it, test flying it. So I'm anxious to see how RAV-2 does compared to RAV-1, and yeah, we'll go from there. Okay, as you can see here, the RAV-2 is now officially complete. The motor, let me slide this forward here. The motor tube is glued in permanently with the epoxy. It's good to go. The clear coat, I gotta talk about this for a second. The clear coat, I use that Quick Shine instead of the Pledge, and I tell you, the difference is night and day. The finish is just as clear and glossy as the Pledge, but I'm not getting the crackling and the scaling that I was getting on the Pledge. So from here on out, I'm gonna start using that Quick Shine. If you're interested in getting some, I picked mine up at Lowe's, and I paid less than $10 for it. It's probably $8 or $9 if I remember right. But again, the difference is night and day as far as the final appearance. It's not crackling, it's not scaling, it's not crinkling. It came out beautifully. So that being said, that's going to be my new go-to for clear coating. Yeah, from the aft end to the nose, the rocket is ready to go. The only thing I did up on the front is I did touch up the nose cone. This is the same nose cone I was flying with before, but it got a little nicked and scratched, so I sanded it down and repainted it black. One thing I also had to do, and I'll share this with you, we're tweaking the size of the plastic that this is printed in, and the body tube, it slides off fairly easy now, but earlier it wasn't, so I did quite a bit of sanding on the shoulder to get it to fit into the BT60, but in future prints of that shoulder, we're gonna make it a little bit smaller, and if need to be, you can always add tape to make it thicker, but it's pretty difficult to sand that down. But I did a lot of sanding to get it down to where it fits smoothly, because remember, we want this to be able to eject out. We're still working on the coding on the software for the RPM, so that means that there's a possibility that the ACE may not deploy. That's why we still want to make sure that we've got the backup chute ready to go. Once we prove that, eventually my goal is to make this somewhat permanent by running a couple wood screws in through the tube and into that shoulder, and then we'll just eliminate the parachute altogether. That will actually move the CG a little forward, which is always good for stability. Make the rocket a little bit lighter, so we'll get more altitude, and by it being quasi-permanent, that will force the motor to be ejected out the back end, because eventually you're going to want to fly this without the cap. Now, for the initial flight, just to make sure everything's working good, I will put the motor in. Here's a spent E12-4, but yeah, that just slips in, and the cap seals it down nice and tight. But in the future, I'll probably end up, like I've done before, wrap some tape around the motor so it's a little tighter, so it won't slip out on the pad. But then when it blows the ejection charge, this will just blow out the back end. And again, that's going to make the rocket lighter as well, so then it'll come down even slower. So with that, I'm going to wrap this video up. Thanks for watching this RAV-2. I may or may not start a RAV-3, just anticipating, in unforeseen circumstances, because this is a test vehicle, and with testing, you never know what you're going to get. So, but I've enjoyed sharing with you the process of building the RAV-2, just like the RAV-1. So we are set to go. So next time you see this rocket, we'll be at the launch pad. So again, thanks for watching. God bless, and we'll catch y'all next time in the next rocket video.